On the ominous morning of September 9th, 1513, near Flodden Edge, a fierce confrontation loomed. King James IV had amassed an army of over 40,000, a blend of lowland levies, seasoned borderers, and untamed Highland clansmen, armed in their traditional ways. Their artillery, though formidable in appearance, was handicapped by inexperienced gunners. James deployed his forces with precision, borderers and Highlanders on the left, his Scottish division in the centre, and troops forming the King's division on the right. Reserves stood ready. Most were pikemen, varying in their protective gear. Across the boggy terrain, the English forces, led by Surrey, awaited. They included troops under Edmund Howard on the right, the largest force under Lord Admiral in the centre, and Surrey's troops on the left. Artillery stood at the forefront. As the sun's rays pierced the mist, a colossal clash loomed. Then, the artillery on both sides opened fire, launching targeted salvos towards the other side. The Battle of Flodden, a symphony of strategy and savagery, was about to unfurl. Introducing the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. Tired of data brokers profiting from your personal information without your consent? Incogni is here to help you reclaim your privacy effortlessly. Incogni's mission is to protect you from hackers, invasion of privacy, and shadow profiles, ensuring your sensitive data stays yours alone. No more wasted hours trying to navigate the complex world of data removal. Incogni's automated data removal tool makes it easy, affordable, and effective. By leveraging GDPR, CCPA, and other privacy laws, Incogni forces data brokers to delete your information from their databases. Partnering with consumer privacy advocacy groups, Incogni empowers you with knowledge and support better privacy laws. Join Incogni today and begin your proactive data removal process. Within months, your personal information will be purged, leaving you protected and in control. The first 100 people to use code House of History at the checkout will get 60% off of their subscription. Visit the link in the description. In medieval times, Scotland evolved from a collection of minor kingdoms and tribal entities. By the 11th century, it became a unified kingdom, with the reign of David I in the 12th century marking an important milestone in its monarchy's development. However, there were challenges, including 13 Scottish nobles vying for the throne in 1290, which led to King Edward I of England attempting to establish control over Scotland. The Scots, valuing their independence, formed the so-called Old Alliance with France in 1295 to resist English dominance. The 100 Years' War heightened the fear of the powerful English army, strengthening the alliance with France, while the French manipulated the Scots into fighting the English for their own benefit. The alliance persisted. The two kingdoms experienced intermittent conflicts and border raids even during periods of peace. In the 15th century, Scottish monarchs aimed to elevate their kingdom's status in Europe, investing in military technology like artillery and a fleet. In 1496, King of Scotland James IV supported a pretender to the English throne, Perkin Warbeck. He was willing to use force to show his support. In September, James led a raid into Northumberland, England, crossing the River Tweed at Coldstream. The defence of northern England was entrusted to Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey, who avoided engaging the Scots because it was just a raid, not an invasion. The Scots caused damage to towns and structures before withdrawing. The following year, England captured Perkin Warbeck, ending the Yorkists' attempts to overthrow Henry VII. James's support for Warbeck and the raid into Northumberland strained his relationship with Henry VII. In 1502, they signed a peace treaty sealed by the marriage of Henry's daughter Mary Tudor to James. However, events in Europe led to war. In 1509, Henry VII passed away. His 17-year-old son succeeded him. He became known as Henry VIII. The Italian wars involved France and the papacy, and Pope Julius II recruited Henry VIII to join the Holy League against France. Louis XII of France invoked the Old Alliance, luring James to nullify his English treaty with promises of money and troops. James believed aligning with France against England would raise Scotland's international standing. Meanwhile, Henry VIII prepared to fight the French and confirmed Surrey as the English commander in the north. Surrey mustered forces, established a headquarters at Pontefract Castle, and called on the northern gentry to gather troops in Newcastle by September 1st. The French attempted to dissuade Henry from war by warning of a Scottish invasion, but he remained determined, trusting Surrey to handle the Scots. Meanwhile, a French and English skirmish called the Battle of the Spurs occurred when a French force attempted to supply the besieged Tyrone garrison, but was repelled by English cavalry and artillery. In Northumberland, a brief but bloody skirmish took place when Alexander Home, a top lieutenant of James, led a mounted Scottish force on a raid. They fell into an ambush set by William Bulmer, the High Sheriff of Durham. The Scottish army crossed the River Tweed and besieged Norham Castle, using siege guns to breach the walls. After the successful siege of Norham Castle, Scottish foot soldiers stormed the breaches, facing English arrows and edged weapons in defence. Despite 3 Scottish charges, the English held their makeshift defences until the garrison finally surrendered on August 29th as no relief force arrived. James then moved along the east bank of the Till River to Ettal and Ford Castles, setting up his headquarters at Ford Castle. His strategy was to draw Surrey's English army as far from London as possible. Both armies faced difficult weather conditions, with cold and rainy weather making marching challenging. Surrey led his English army north from Newcastle on August 31st, halting at Bolton near Alnwick on September 4th. Learning that the Scottish army was positioned defensively at Flodden Edge, a high ridge, Surrey decided to manoeuvre to draw them out. Surrey led the army north and west, intending to recross the Till to cut off James's communication to Scotland. Scottish scouts spotted the English army, prompting James to abandon Flodden Edge and reposition at Branxton Edge, facing north. While still a defensive position, it wasn't as defensible as the previous one. James had assembled an army of 42,000 troops, including lowland levies, veteran borderers, and fierce Highland clansmen armed with bows and swords, fighting in their traditional manner. The Scottish army possessed 29 artillery pieces, including heavy siege guns and culverins, but their gunners lacked the experience of their English counterparts. James deployed 10,000 borderers and Highlanders on the left, the 7,000-strong Scottish division in the centre, and 15,000 troops known as the King's Division on the right. 2 reserve divisions, numbering 5,000 each, the Highlander Reserve and the Lowland Reserve, were positioned to cover flanks and offer support. Most Scottish troops were pikemen, but Highlanders fought in their traditional way with claymores, 2-handed axes, and bows. The Scottish pikemen in the front ranks wore various types of protection, from full-plate armour to padded jacks and brigandines, some equipped with splint armour. The English army, led by Surrey, had 3,000 troops under Edmund Howard on the right, 11,000 under Lord Admiral in the centre, and 5,000 under Surrey on the left. A 3,000-strong support division under Sir Edward Stanley and Sir Marmaduke Constable was on the extreme left flank, while 3,500 cavalry under Lord Thomas Dacre served as the reserve. Both armies placed their artillery in front of their divisions, and the English initiated the bombardment. Skilled English gunners effectively dismantled Scottish artillery, leading to the withdrawal of surviving Scottish gunners. The English continued shelling, causing gruesome casualties among the Scottish pike formations, and ultimately killed the Scottish artillery commander during the artillery duel. As the Scottish foot soldiers faced a relentless English bombardment, James realized he needed to act to maintain his troops' morale. James ordered a staggered attack, aiming to compel the English to commit their forces incrementally, creating openings for subsequent advances. The success of the Scottish pike attack depended on maintaining momentum down Flodden Edge's northern slope. However, a marshy gully at the base posed a significant obstacle, especially for the middle and right divisions. The left division, following James's orders, advanced in an organised manner, attacking with square and wedge-shaped formations. Lord Home's pike attack on the Scottish left outnumbered Edmund Howard's division 2-1, shattering the cohesion of the Cheshire levies. Even before the Scottish advance, the Cheshire levies were uneasy, resenting their younger Howard commander and longing to fight under Lord Stanley's banner. They faced not only Lord Home's pike squares, but also the fury of Lord Huntly's Highlanders. When the English levies' cohesion crumbled, the Scottish Highlanders mercilessly attacked the fleeing Cheshire levies. Surrey, observing the crisis on his right, deployed Lord Dacre's cavalry to stabilise the situation. They launched a determined counterattack and helped rescue the remnants of the shattered division, ensuring the safety of the youngest Howard, who was under attack by Highlanders. As the battle at Flodden raged on, the Scottish division, consisting of troops from various regions, charged down Branxton Hill toward the English centre under the Lord Admiral. However, their momentum was disrupted when they encountered a marshy stream at the hill's base, and the bulk of the English troops positioned on the elevated Piper's Hill further obstructed their advance. Despite a barrage of arrows from the English archers, the well-armoured Scottish pikemen in the front ranks struggled uphill, their armour proving effective against the arrows. The Scottish earls leading the division tried to rally their pike squares, but their attack faltered on the crest of Piper's Hill. Meanwhile, King James's division, following suit with the other Scottish divisions, descended the northern slope of Flodden Edge, but also struggled due to the slushy ground. The English Lord Admiral's troops, determined not to meet the fate of the Cheshire levies, fought vigorously. Some English soldiers managed to infiltrate the Scottish ranks, forcing many Scots to abandon their pikes and resort to swords. In the ensuing melee, the Scottish swordsmen were outmatched by the English wielding longer billhooks. Despite fierce fighting atop Piper's Hill, the Scots failed to gain the upper hand. The English centre, under the charismatic and steadfast leadership of the Lord Admiral, capitalised on this advantage, causing the Scottish division to ultimately collapse. Although the King's division's size posed a challenge for the English, Surrey executed a skilled manoeuvre, having his front ranks pull back to allow the Lord Admiral's troops to attack the exposed left flank of the King's division. The English longbowmen played a crucial role in thinning the ranks of the Scottish foot soldiers as the battle ebbed and flowed. Ultimately, the English prevailed, and many Scots in the front ranks, perceiving defeat, dropped their weapons and fled. Unfortunately for King James, the reserve division led by Lennox and Argyll did not come to his aid, and their reasons for not doing so remain unclear. James attempted to rally support from Lords Home and Huntly, but Lord Home refused to obey the order, leading to further complications for the Scottish king. By late afternoon, the Scottish reserve led by the Earl of Bothwell charged. However, their deployment was ineffective as they entered the rear of King James's troops, mingling with retreating soldiers and causing confusion. Instead of striking an English flank, Bothwell's troops became entangled with those fleeing the battlefield, contributing little to the Scottish cause. Meanwhile, the English billmen and archers began encircling the Scottish army. By early evening, Lord Stanley and his troops arrived at the battlefield, approaching discreetly over terrain hidden from Scottish view. They surprised the Highlander reserve positioned behind the Scottish right, targeting them with accurate archery. Many lightly armoured Highlanders were killed, while survivors fled west, encountering the Scottish pikemen retreating from the main battle. James fell in combat within a circle of Scots still fighting, marking the end of the Scottish resistance. The battle ended in a resounding English victory, with the English capturing the Scottish artillery, making their triumph even more significant. Flodden was a devastating defeat for the Scots, resulting in the loss of 10,000 men, including numerous high-ranking nobles and clergymen, while the English suffered only 1,500 casualties. The Battle of Flodden marked a significant turning point by neutralising Scotland as a military threat to Henry for several years. The victorious Howards, Surrey and Howard, were generously rewarded in the aftermath. Surrey was elevated to the title of Duke of Norfolk, and Howard received the title of Earl of Surrey as a token of appreciation for his strategic idea that led to the brilliant victory. After the battle, James's 17-month-old son, James V, was crowned King of Scotland. From now on, Scotland would be ruled by regents, its policy towards England hampered by infighting. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.